Hey mamas, you're listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast, the only podcast teaching you how to balance your work, motherhood, and wellness. I am Dr. Amber Thornton, clinical psychologist and mama wellness consultant. Each week we dive into tips and strategies and much more so that you too can become a balanced working mama. Let's dive in. Hey mamas, we're back for another episode of the Balanced Working Mama podcast. So, welcome back. For anyone who's listening for the first time, hello. I hope you enjoy this episode today. But before we get into the episode, let's check in a little bit. So, let's see. How are things going? I am coming on the third trimester. It's like literally right around the corner. And so, for me, what I've noticed is that I am definitely um, feeling a little bit more tired. The other day I took a nap, which is like not like me. Usually I don't take naps. But I took a nap because I just really felt very tired. And it was just like, oh, okay, this is what's happening. And I've started to do the nesting thing a little bit, like just completely changing, well, not changing, but like getting rid of C3's old clothes and um kind of making more space in his closet, and then starting to think about, okay, well, baby, where is baby girl gonna go? What we did for my son C3 is that he was in a bassinet in our room for the first probably 8 weeks or so, and then we transitioned him into his room. So we'll probably try the same thing for baby girl. um but we still have to figure out where she's gonna go. That is a thing, because right now in our current home, our spare bedroom is our office slash guest bedroom. And so I actually am not looking forward to breaking down my office, because that's where I'm at right now recording. But I'm okay with letting this extra bed go. So temporarily, what we'll probably do is we'll have her in our room for the first 8 weeks or so. And then when she's ready to transition into her room will double as the office in her room. Um, hopefully we will actually move into a different house and have more space. That's our goal for 2021. And things will change, but you got to do what you got to do in the moment, okay? And so that's one of the things we preach at Balanced Working Mama. There is no perfectionism. Work with what you've got, do what you can. And for now, baby girl is going to have to share the office space, but I imagine for the first part of her life, she won't be in her room very much, anyways. So, either way, doing what we can to really get into a place where we're ready for her to enter this world. We're very excited to have her. Um, yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm feeling good still, just tired. Just tired, which is expected for the third trimester. So I'll definitely keep y'all posted with how things continue to go. Also, want to give you an update. The Balanced Working Mama Retreat is still on and popping. Oh. I am so excited for this retreat. And I know that I say it all the time, but I just want to reiterate, I am very excited. I know we got some mamas that are excited. We've confirmed our speakers, and you all will be hearing about who they are very soon. But then also, oh, wait, what was I just going to say? Oh, no. Baby brain's trying to trip me up today because I completely lost my train of thought. Um, Either way, we've got one more week to register for early registration. And so, what that means is that if you register in January, you get a discounted rate. If you register between February 1st and 12th, you get the regular rate. Either way, I want you all to register. I want you all to attend. I really want you to treat this like a vacation for yourself. And so I shared recently on Instagram about how to actually approach this retreat so that it feels like a vacation for you. So, really plan ahead. Who's going to watch the kids? Who's going to help you with that? Where are you going to be? Do you want to get a hotel room? Do you want to make a spare space in your own home where it's just you? no kids, no spouse, no partner, nothing, just you, so that you can really focus on yourself and on what this retreat has to offer for the weekend. Do what you need to do to plan ahead so that it really can feel like a weekend for you. That's how I really want this to go. But either way, I'm so excited. We also have one more week for the giveaway. And so, if you don't know about the giveaway, all you need to do is to reshare one of the posts that I share about the retreat, either to your stories or to an actual post on your feed. You have to make sure that you tag myself at Dr. Amber Thornton and Balanced Working Mama IG, and then you'll have one entry for the giveaway to attend the retreat for free. So I'll be announcing the winner of that giveaway at the end of January. But either way, please register. Cannot wait to see you all there. So excited to move forward with this retreat. We've got some exciting things happening with that. Either way, let's get into this episode today. We have another guest on the podcast today, and we are going to be talking about our kids and their behaviors. And this is important, especially for us toddler mamas, because I know that we are out here struggling, but really for all mamas, because it's important to understand and to really learn what our children are trying to communicate with their behavior. So I won't say too much more. Let's just get into the episode. Hey mama, Balanced Working Mama is growing. I want to make sure that you stay connected and up to date with everything happening over here. So you don't miss any of the good stuff, head over to balancedworkingmama.com, sign up for the newsletter. You'll always be the first to learn of any new podcast episodes, events, programs, and you'll get a hello from me every now and then. So sign up today, mama, because I want to connect with you soon. Hey mamas. So we have another guest. She's actually a second time guest. She's been on the podcast before, but I'm having her back to talk about something a little bit different. But before we get into it, I would love to introduce Shamika to you all. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself for the second time around and what you do.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am so happy to be back speaking with Dr. Amber. Um, I am a board certified assistant behavior analyst. It's a mouthful, but what I do is analyze human behavior, basically. And we do this using the science of applied behavior analysis, which is basically just the science of human behavior. How do we interact with our environment, and how does the environment um, play a role in how we respond and how we behave? Um, I have been in this field for about 7 years now. I help young children. Early intervention is really my niche, but I have experience from kiddos from the age of 1.5 all the way up to about 20. So I help them develop skills that will help them be more independent, facilitate better communication. I also train parents and caregivers, guardians, on how to kind of deal with any challenging behaviors typically developing children may be exhibiting, or children that might have an intellectual disability such as autism spectrum disorder. So it's like my passion for the science.
This is so good. Because when you and I connected about this very episode, you were like, not to plug myself, but I've got this experience. And I was like, girl, I'm glad you did, because I was just thinking about how, especially the toddler moms right now, we are out here struggling because, I don't know, for me personally, this might not be every mom's experience, but the transition from like infant to toddler has been one that I wish people would have prepared me a little bit more for. And of course, I don't have the experience of the other phases just yet, but I feel like this one might be the one that's the most tough for me, because we go from having a little baby who fully depends on us to this kid who is now like, no, mine, no, I don't want this. I had eggs yesterday and I loved it. Now I hate it today. Like, it's just like, what do we do with this? And so, But also, like you said, it's important to understand behaviors of our children at any age. And so I'm so glad to speak with you today because I feel like any of the mamas listening today would benefit. But I first just want to ask you, why do you think for us as parents, we have such a hard time sometimes with understanding our children, especially when it comes to their behaviors?
I think, well, number one, we all love our children and we all want what's best for them. I think at the core of, even, I'm a mom of one, a little girl, and when I think about the behaviors I kind of want her to engage in, I think some of that comes from, well, how was I raised? What behaviors were expected of me when I was her age? And I think that's what kind of a lot of parents draw from. Either you're drawn from, I loved those experiences. I loved how my parents or my guardians parented. And so I'm drawn from that. Or you're on the other side of the coin where it's just like, absolutely not. I did not enjoy those experiences. Those experiences did not make me feel well. They did not evoke any type of uh, great self awareness or self esteem in me. And so now I'm doing different for my child, my children.
Ooh, that makes a lot of sense because I even see that in the way that I parent a little bit. Like, there's many great things that my parents did. And so I try to implement that. But then there's also some things that I didn't like. And so then it's requiring me to figure out, okay, well, I didn't like that. So I know what I don't want to do, but then what exactly am I supposed to do? But the one thing it made me think about as you were saying that, you can kind of tell me what you think about this, is that there's a lot of bias when it comes to like how we think about our parenting, and also how we think about how we were parented and then how we proceed with our children. And I think that can make it hard. And that's probably why all of this is just coming to me. That's probably why it's so important to work with professionals when we do need some help or seek guidance from people like you, because there is that objective perspective on what's going on. But we are just so biased when it comes to what we're doing or what we've experienced.
Absolutely. I feel that we bring so much into all of our relationships that we engage in as parents. And sometimes you do have to do some self-reflection, whether that's just going to be you sitting down with yourself or your significant other or the other parent, the co-parent, or seeking advice from a professional, um, and kind of seeing how you can kind of, and I'm going to go into that, but like check your own behavior first before you then decide, okay, exactly what do I want to do discipline wise for my child? Yeah.
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. And like, before we even get further into it, I actually wanted to just ask you to break down, like, because we're going to say the word behavior a lot today. And I want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we're talking about. So what does that even mean when we say behavior? How should we be thinking about it, or how would you define behavior?
Love this question. I actually did a training at my job not too long ago. We have a crisis management training that our entire behavior department conducts, and this section of the training always sparks a lot of conversation. So I think automatically when people hear behavior, they think of negative behaviors right away. So if I say, oh, my child is engaging in this behavior, exhibiting this behavior, people are thinking about hitting, kicking, spitting, being non-compliant, um, throwing a tantrum. But actually, literally, behavior is anything that humans do, a living organism does. Anything. It's everything we do. So, me speaking to you right now is a behavior. Eating is a behavior. Brushing your teeth is a behavior. Walking, singing, talking, clapping, all of that are what we would define as behaviors. Anything that we do is a behavior. And I think that once people understand that, then you can kind of work your way into um, how you then bring about those desired behaviors you want to see in your child.
Right. Oh, that is so good because I think you're right. So, behavior management is not my specialty in my career, but it's something I've done in the past, and I don't want to do it again. Um, I do not want to do it. I'm glad there's people like you, because what I would do is like basically have parents who felt like their children needed therapy. They would come into my office and come to find out there's a really big behavioral issue, not necessarily a mental health issue, and then coaching them through the process of understanding behavior, how to reinforce it, blah, 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 blah. And so from my experience too, professionally, I think like exactly what you said, when parents think of behavior, we're only focusing on the, I'm quoting here, the bad behaviors or the negative behaviors. But I love what you said is like when we broaden it out and we open it up, it helps us to actually see the other behaviors. Um, yeah, that is so good. And so it also makes me think too, you know, what I know is that I think probably a lot of times, and this might happen for you too, like when parents come to see you or when a child needs help, the question is always, well, how do we improve their behavior? And I know the mamas that are listening are probably thinking about that too. And so that's the question I have for you, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit based on what you just said is I want to ask you, what is the best way to improve behavior? Or better yet, what's the best way to increase the behaviors that we want to see for our children?
I think number one, the first thing to do is, as we spoke just a while ago about, is making sure that we remove any biases we have in regards to the behaviors that were expected of us when we were younger. So I think that's number one. Number two, I think it's also important for parents to know what are age appropriate behaviors for your child to be exhibiting
Yeah.
at that in that time, right? So I struggle with this because I do have some clients who do not have any type of diagnosis, or do not have an autism diagnosis. And but most of my children, they do have some type of intellectual or developmental disability. So now when I have my own child, it took me some time to kind of realize, like, okay, is that what a 1 year old is supposed to be doing? Or because I literally had no idea, because I was so used to just dealing with, this other population. And so I really had to reach out to her pediatrician, the teachers and nurses in my family, and my friends, and ask them, okay, like, she's doing this, this, and that. And they would laugh a few times, like, Shamika, she's fine. She doesn't have ADHD. She doesn't have autism. That is what a 1 year old does. A 1 year old will throw a tantrum. So I think just reaching out and just seeing what's age appropriate and what's not. Also,
Before you go on to the next one, actually, I want to put a pin there because I think that is so important. I want to reiterate it, like the childhood or developmental education, right? Like I struggle with that too. Like I have so much knowledge about like development and child development, but like I still am like, okay, is he supposed to be doing this? And so that's why I want to say it again. It's so important to reach out to professionals. And so it's important to like, read books about this topic or go to websites that have this information or even just listening to this podcast. Cause I think sometimes, especially moms, we assume and people around us assume that, oh, you're a mom, so you just know it all.
absolutely.
And that is so not true. Like we are not born with this. I don't know anything about this. And so it is okay if you need to like listen to a book on Audible about child development. If you need to read a book about behaviors, like you need to go see a professional, see a behavioral management specialist or a psychologist, do it because we were not born with this knowledge. But what you're saying is that it's important to have this knowledge so that you can then better be prepared when you're wanting to understand behaviors.
Absolutely. Totally agree. There's so many resources and books, anybody who is already knowledgeable around you. As I said, my daughter's pediatrician was a huge help. There's definitely resources. So I would say definitely tap into those just to kind of get a gauge of like what they should be doing and what may be outside of the scope of their developmental stage where they're at. Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
No, no
You were
problem.
going to say something else, but I
Uh,
wanted to make sure I say that part.
no, also, I think that reinforcement goes a long way. Um, as I said, when we think about behaviors, we think about only the negative behaviors, but when we do broaden the spectrum and realize that behavior is anything that we do, like this morning before I dropped my daughter off to school, she's in the in between potty stage and area. Like she'll tell us when she needs to go, but usually she already has gone.
That's great. Good job.
Or
Good for
like
her.
she takes off her own diaper and she'll pee next to the potty. So it was very frustrating this morning, and that's a negative behavior. But however, as soon as she did something that was desirable, which was she literally just walking down the steps, holding my hand, reinforced right away. Oh my gosh, you're doing such an amazing job walking down the stairs, holding mommy's hand. And so I think instead of us focusing all on the negative behaviors or the tantruming, the hitting, the kicking, find those moments when they're engaging in desired behavior, the behavior you want to see, and reinforce them. Literally make it feel like it's Disney World. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you for cleaning up your toys. Even if 3 seconds ago they threw them.
Yeah.
Find those pockets to reinforce
Yep.
those behaviors.
I love that. And can we take a tiny step back because you're saying reinforcement, and I know that you and I know what that means, but can you explain a little bit when you say reinforcement?
Absolutely.
That's the us professionals, we sometimes we forget. Yes. Explain it a little bit when you say reinforcement. What does that mean?
Absolutely. So, in applied behavior analysis, a contingency basically is 3 parts, the simplest part. So we have antecedents. We call antecedents anything that happens right before a behavior. Then we have the behavior, that's the actual thing that we're engaging in. And then immediately after the behavior, we call those consequences. Now, consequences can be positive or negative. That's another assumption that people make. Once they hear consequences, they automatically think it's negative. So a consequence is either punishment in our science or reinforcement. What reinforcement is anything, absolutely anything that happens right after a behavior that increases that same behavior to happen more frequently in the future. So for example, if your child, okay, the antecedent right before the behavior, it's time to go to bed. So you say, hey, time to clean up your toys, it's bedtime. If the child then screams, falls out on the floor, no, 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 that's the behavior. The consequence is whatever happens right after. So if it's attention where the parent is like, oh no, it's okay, like you can get a few more minutes, like you don't have to go to bed, that is actually still reinforcing that behavior. So now in the future, the next time you go in and say, hey, it's bedtime, that child is going to do what? Is going to cry, is going to fall out. Because children are super smart, I know that when I cry, when I fall out, when you tell me it's bedtime, I'm going to get more time. So why would I do anything else different?
Right.
And that's what reinforcement is. Reinforcement will strengthen whatever behavior it is.
Yep. So I have an example, like a real life example. And again, apologies to all the moms who are over the toddler phase, but I know some of us are like deep in the thick of it. And so all of my examples might be toddler related, but if you have some examples of non-toddler ones, definitely shout them out. But I know for me, my son, Oh, there's so many examples. So the one example that I just thought about was how I got into the habit of teaching him how to help around the house. And so one of them is like throwing things in the trash for me, you know. So now he's really good at it. I'm like, okay, can you go put this in the trash? And he'll take it. He'll like hop over all happy and cheerful and put it in there. And I'm like, awesome. Thank you, baby. You're so helpful. Um, but it took work because initially he didn't know what the trash can was. He didn't know what I was at, why I was asking him to do this. But what I did was every time he did it, I would praise him for it. And I just say, oh, baby, that is so good. Thank you so much. And so what I've learned is that reinforcement, like you said, that thing that you do right after a behavior that you want to continue to see. It can come in so many different forms, like praise, verbal praise, or it could be even just like a little hug or a pat on the back or just something that feels good to the kid, is going to help. And so like me always saying like, oh, thank you, baby. I love it. Thank you being so helpful. Now he's always willing to throw things in the trash for me. Or even another one that we're working on getting him to drink out of his open cup. And so right now,
Your story.
yes. So right now he likes to put his hand in the cup. And so I think that can be a trigger for a lot of parents. And so some of us, our default reaction is to say, no, no hand, or like no hand in the cup. And we do that more frequently than we do if we see him actually pick up the cup, even if he doesn't drink it. And so I need to be reinforcing him doing the thing I want as opposed to giving attention to the thing that I don't want. And so what I'm trying to do is, like, for instance, when he did it this morning, when he puts his hand in the cup of water, just give it as little attention as possible. Maybe just take it away or just replace it. But when I see him actually picking it up with two hands, putting it to his mouth, I'm like, oh, yes, baby, do it again, do it again. And it works. It was so funny the other day. He did it like one time. He put it up, he picked it up. I was like, yeah, baby, look at that. And I was like, Daddy, look at him. And then we made it such a big deal. And then I was like, okay, do it again. And he did it again. And so there, that was a perfect example of like, instead of paying attention to him putting his hand in the cup, I've got to pay more attention to him actually working towards doing the thing I want, which is him drinking out of the open cup.
Let me just tell you that makes my heart so glad. You do not need me here.
No, we do. We still need you here.
You That's exactly what I would tell any one of my clients, parents who come to me with it could be anything. That's exactly what you do. And a key point is when they do engage in that, we use the word maladaptive behavior. That just means challenging behavior. To pay it little attention. The misconception is, oh, well, now I'm ignoring my child. Absolutely not. You can address your child without addressing the behavior. And that's exactly what you did. Why, okay, you put your hand in the cup, you made sure it didn't spill, you might have moved the cup, but then as soon as he engages in the right thing, you're praising him right away. Dad is praising him. He's excited. You guys are excited. And then now that teaches him, hey, when I do this specific thing, that's what's going to happen. And I like that. So let me do that more. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you're here to speak to that. I'm trying to think of an example that might be helpful for maybe some of the mamas who have like school agers. Can you think of one? If not, I think I might have one.
Anything like, so you can also automatically, my mind comes to like electronics.
Yes, talk about it because that's big right now.
Yeah. And so when I think of older age kids, because when I think of the teenagers I support, they don't really use too much electronics. But when I think of like my other clients who might come to me that do have school age children, um, it could be an instance of, okay, you were supposed to like clean your room and you didn't clean your room. And so now okay, so you can do two things. So you need a consequence. You told them to clean the room. The behavior is like they didn't do it. Maybe they didn't completely do it, or they didn't do it up to your expectation. And so the consequence would then be, okay, either you can remove something, and then that behavior, because they want it back, that behavior is now going to happen. That is still reinforcement. because reinforcement, as I said, is anything that's going to increase that behavior. So if me, okay, you didn't complete this task, then that phone has to be taken away. But then that behavior happens, that's reinforcement,
Mhm.
because your that behavior still is going to happen now in the future. If I now come to you a second time and say, okay, well, this is what I need to be done, more likely than not, it's like, oh wait, I don't want my phone to be taken away, so let me
Mhm.
do what I need to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I like that. Or even so I like that. And the other way I was thinking about it too is like um doing that, but then also when they actually do, if it's like clean your room, like when they actually do clean your room, especially when it's like the first time asked and it's up to your standards, don't that's a big thing. So like give it the attention and praise that it deserves. And I think that's the hard part, because I think for parents, especially Black parents, we feel like, oh, you supposed to be doing that anyway, so I'm not gonna praise you for that.
My mom told me that all the time. I used to be like, oh my gosh, like I got an A on this paper, and she's just like,
You
that's what
supposed to.
you're supposed to do. Like, I'm not. What do you want me to say to that? But yes, absolutely, definitely
Hmm.
use that behavior too, and
Yep.
also know that we say the immediacy of reinforcement. So
Hmm.
I actually had a friend who was literally, ABA can be applied to anything. Was actually training her puppy.
Hmm.
Puppy was biting on her couch a lot or whatever, and but then she wouldn't, so the puppy would bite on the couch, and then maybe like a minute later then she would like spray him with a little water bottle, and I'm like, but he has done five things between scratching up your couch and then getting the consequence of that spray bottle. He
Hmm.
doesn't know why that happened. And the same thing relates to children. Like if you want to reprimand or you want even to praise, you need to do it right after that behavior happens,
Hmm.
so they know
Hmm.
either this was a desired behavior or this is an inappropriate behavior
Yeah.
based on your response.
Yep, absolutely. Completely agree. And I just think I keep thinking about that cultural piece. I know when I've worked with Black families, or, yeah, Black families specifically, and this might not even be specific to Black people, but it's just my experience.
Right.
I've really had to provide some education around, like, I know this is our cultural experience of feeling like, the things that we feel like our children should already be doing doesn't warrant any attention. But I'm here to tell you that when we want to improve those instances or those behaviors, those things that we really like to see in our kids, we really do have to give it some attention. And so that, I think that's one thing that I'm seeing millennial parents really change the narrative around, is like, yeah, of course I expect you to get these A's, and I'm also going to make sure that I'm proud of you for it and you're doing a good job. Or, yes, I do expect for you to keep your room clean. And I'm also going to let you know, like, when you do it, this is good. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you. I appreciate you. I love you. Blah, 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 blah. Like, we really do need to praise and give that attention, so that we can continue to see those things in our children.
Very, very important. No matter
Yeah.
how old your child is, like the itty bitties, toddlers, school age, teenagers, even adults. Like if I
Hmm.
want my husband to take out the trash more often, I'm
Hmm.
he does it, babe. I appreciate you. Thank you so
Yes.
much for taking out the trash. And he's like, okay. And automatically, I see the trash
Right.
out more.
It works on everybody.
Absolutely
Everybody. So, I feel like the next question I was going to ask, we kind of already got into it a little bit, but I was going to ask you, how should we be thinking about punishment? And I feel like it's so related, because I think what you basically just said, well, you kind of explained what punishment is, but I think when we, as, people who don't maybe have a lot of this knowledge, we think of punishment as like, I don't know how to say, like, I guess like harsh discipline, or like always something negative that you have to do after your child does something wrong. But how would you encourage us to think about or redefine what punishment should be?
So it's funny because in our science, if you're doing it ethically,
Hmm.
we try not to use punishment unless it's absolutely necessary. And in order to avoid that, you have to kind of set yourself up prior to. So I talk about like antecedent strategies with my parents and caregivers, and those are just things that you can do. If I know that my child for instance, my daughter just started getting into the iPad. She had no awareness of it, didn't care about it, but now she kind of likes it from time to time. I
Mhm.
know that if she sees it in the morning, we try to not give her any screen time during the week, only on the weekends. If she sees it in the morning, that usually leads to a tantrum because she now wants to watch something. What
Mhm.
do I do? Oh, okay. Before she wakes up, because we use it for white noise in the nighttime.
Mhm.
But since I get up before her, before she wakes up, I'll go turn off the iPad and I hide it.
Mhm.
Therefore, now I am kind of decreasing that situation from even happening
Yep.
because I was proactive instead of reactive about it. Um, also, reinforcement too. If you're doing a lot of reinforcing, then you shouldn't have to be doing a lot of punishing.
Right.
But what punishment is, and we have positive punishment and we have negative punishment, and it goes real deep, which we don't need to do. But basically, so punishment is the opposite of reinforcement. Is going to be anything that happens right after the behavior that decreases the future frequency of that behavior happening. So it's going to decrease the likelihood that the behavior you just saw that you didn't like or was inappropriate from happening again. And so I tell parents, whatever it is, if it's hitting, if it's talking back, or if it's anything, you want to make sure that you address it as soon as it happens. And I honestly leave that up to parents because our science has a lot of strategies and techniques, but I also understand that, and when I speak to families, I know that how they discipline is based on their cultural
Mhm.
norms. And
Mhm.
so I usually leave that up to parents. Some parents like timeout. Some parents like, um, I don't condone spanking because I just feel like there's so many different things you could do.
Mhm.
But parents like, some parents like that, not knocking them. I got spanked. I don't even think I got spanked. I got beat. Like I got beatings. I didn't get spanked. Um, but some parents like that. But I just let them know that you have to make sure one, it's immediate.
Yeah.
So you need to, as soon as that behavior happens, it's not like, oh, I'm talking on the phone or I'm cooking dinner. And sometimes it's hard because we are busy and we're multitaskers,
Mhm.
especially moms. Like we're usually not doing just one thing at one time.
Right.
You have to make sure that you address that behavior right away. So the immediacy of it. Also, if you're gonna punish, you gotta see it through. If you
Yeah.
say if you throw that toy one more time, no iPad or the TV's turning off. When they throw that toy one time, no iPad and the TV's turned off.
Mhm.
I think that's where a lot of people punishment fails
Yes.
because it's like you you have to it's important. It's literally scientific. It has to be immediate and it has to be I don't like it's not severe. It has to be you got to follow through. Like
Yes.
you said it, you have to do it so they know that okay, I did this. This was the consequence, the punishment for it. And
Mhm.
if I do not like that punishment, then I'm not going to do it again. I laugh because a lot of my kids, people think punishment is different for everybody.
Yeah.
Very important fact. If you take, I remember I'm the oldest of three girls.
Mhm.
I hated getting spankings. My middle sister did not care. She cared about her books. So don't touch her books and she's good. And I remember my mother, she used to spank her, and my middle sister would sit there and laugh because that
It's
meant
effective for
nothing
her.
to her. And
Mhm.
so you have to know, especially if you have multiple children, you
Mhm.
have to kind of know what they really love, what they don't love,
Yep.
because then you can accidentally reinforce the behavior that you're trying to punish.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you spoke to the part of like you have to follow through. And also like you're saying punishment is different for everybody. Like I know, well, I'm still learning my son, so I'm not going to give an example. But I was just going to say just like what you said, like for your sister it was the books. And so a more effective punishment might have been like, okay, you did that, we're going to take away these books for the
Mhm.
day. And she probably would have been devastated. And then
Yes.
she would have learned her lesson, like, hey, this is a lesson. This connects with me. When I do this thing, my books get taken away. But as far as the follow through, I'm so glad you said that because I think I see that far too often as well, where I think maybe for some of us, our experience has been that we were given threats in order to comply or to have good behavior. And so a parent might do something like, oh, you do that again, I'm taking away your birthday party, knowing good and damn well that they already invested $500 in this party, is already booked. You can't take the party away. And so you've given this big threat thinking that it's going to scare the child, but really what it teaches your child is, oh, my mom says she's going to do this thing, but look, I got my party, so I can do what I want. So we really have to get away from the idea of threatening our children into good behavior. And again, I'm hoping that this is something we're seeing different in millennial culture, but I know that this is something that a lot of our parents did. They would give us these threats to scare us into having good behavior, when really we see that that's very ineffective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Make sure it's something you can deliver.
Mm-hmm.
Something you can deliver. When I consult in schools, it's the same thing I tell teachers. I'm like, don't tell them that, oh, you can't. When I was working in California, I'm like, don't tell these kids that, you're gonna take away their recess for a week, because legally you cannot do that. That is a
Yep.
part of their curriculum. It's a part of their school day. So you have to make it something that you can deliver.
Mm-hmm.
If that behavior happens again, you can follow through, and you can deliver, and it's going to be immediate.
Yep. Or even with just the holidays passing, I know there's some parents are like, oh, you do that again? No Christmas for you. Knowing good and well you already bought all them gifts. You gonna feel guilty having not your child not having Christmas. You're not gonna take Christmas away. So why even say it? And it's because we think they're gonna be afraid with that threat, but really in the long run, it's gonna really do you a disservice. So many good examples. And I want to ask you, now I want to kind of bring it to the pandemic, because I imagine that with all the stuff that we talked about, and it's really great, things have maybe been a little bit different or challenging because of the pandemic. And so I want to ask you, um, how should we be thinking about this in the context of the pandemic, or how might understanding or managing behaviors look different now as opposed to what it did pre-pandemic?
Absolutely. Even this entire pandemic has changed all of our lives in some way, shape, or form. Even in the setting that I work in now, which is a residential setting, so all of our children live at the home. So we have children from literally birth until 20, and they reside there. That we're in their house, providing services. And what I will say is that, pandemic or not, but specifically during this pandemic, what I have seen, what I have heard from caregivers, and even our direct support staff that I support, is that routines are everything. Structure is everything, especially during this time where kids are not, they're going to school one week, they're not in school, or they're home, they're doing distant learning for a long period of time. Routines are everything. Set expectations along with those routines as well, because it's like a lot of parents now, like when I speak to my parents who are moms who have school age children, they're like, okay, my house is now turned upside down. And I'm like, okay, you need to, that's fine, we're all human, this is all new to everyone, but take some time to sit back, reflect, and set a routine. Let there be some structure. Still get the kids up at the same time. We're doing breakfast at the same, as much as possible. We're
Absolutely.
doing school from this time. We're doing dinner at this time. Bed is this time, because they really strive on structure. Where, I mean, school is structured. They would wake up, they would go, they have their own structure within school. When they come home, there's a schedule after that. And so we have, I think during this time, what I've been hearing from a lot of parents and caregivers is just that, okay, how can we kind of gain that control again, or some type of form of normalcy, um, in hopes that all these challenging behaviors are not going to increase, because that's what we've been seeing at my job, is that a lot of behaviors, children who didn't even engage in challenging behaviors, are now doing so because the structure is gone, because their lives have changed too. I think we have to think about our children, like their lives have completely changed. Like what they're going through, we didn't have to go through that. And so we have to kind of think about, how best can we kind of give them some type of uh, routine and normalcy for them to thrive in as well. And then set those expectations for every activity you have. If you're home, let them know this is what's expected from you during this time, and make sure that you follow through with those expectations as well.
Absolutely. And it just reminds me, it kind of correlates a little bit to the mamas that participate in the Empower Wellness program. Some of them, their goal is working on improving time management and organization. And I think for some of them, especially during the pandemic, like you said, they've noticed and they feel like their routines, their household, everything is upside down. Everything feels chaotic. And I'm like, okay, but we've got to find the ways to put it back in because it's good for us, but it's really, really, really good for our kids too. And so I know that it can be challenging, but to be honest, and is what you're saying too, is in the moments that feel most chaotic, that's when we need structure, routine the most. And so even if it's starting small, even if all you need to start with doing is waking up the kids at the same time every day, start there. When you get the hang of that, move on to the next thing. Then you can start to become consistent about a breakfast routine. When you got the hang of that, move on to the next thing. So it is really, really important. And so I know that we're coming on to the end of this episode. And I first just want to thank you so much because, again, I feel like the mamas are going to listen to this and just feel so much more informed about how to think about behaviors. But, for anybody who's listening to this episode today and they're just like, okay, I need to have just like the highlights, what are the top 3 tips you would want parents to know in terms of how to improve their behaviors, how to improve child's behaviors?
So we covered all of them, but number one is set expectations, make them clear, make them short, and make them I'm sorry, a huge bird just flew by. Anyway, I'm sorry. So set expectations, make them clear, make them short, make them obtainable. So that would be the first one. The second one is reinforce those desired behaviors that you really want to see. Make sure it's immediate, um, and make sure that it can't be like your child, picked up a cup with 2 hands for the first time and you're like, oh, that's great. No, like make sure
Sure.
it matches that
Yep.
effort. Like put some, be enthusiastic about it. So set expectations, reinforce the desired behaviors. And I think the third thing would be just follow through.
Yes.
Whatever expectations you set, uh, make sure you follow through so that they learn. We all learn, and everything is a learning process, not just for our children, but for us. But as we are parenting them, we need to teach them that when they engage in certain behaviors, this happens. When they engage in certain behaviors, something else will happen. And keep them, they're super smart. Keep them accountable for those things.
Yep.
Um, and then overall, just, we're all human. Honestly, even in the work that I do, one day this strategy will work with the same child and be great, and the next day it might not.
Mhm.
Just kind of always self-reflect and be kind to yourselves, be kind to them. And I think open communication and just reflecting on our behaviors and their behaviors and knowing exactly what you want to see
Yeah.
is a good way to go.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for all of these tips, all of this information. We appreciate you so much. Again, this is your second time being on the podcast. So you all can check her out in season 2. But then also here she is in season 3. So I appreciate you so much. Please, please, if any of the mamas want to connect with you, can you let us know how we can reach out to you, how they can find you?
Awesome. So I am on Instagram at Mika, Mika underscore Raquel, Racquel. I also have an account where I only solely do like behavior related things, and that is behavior underscore boldly on Instagram. And if you're on Clubhouse, I'm usually in a room with moms talking about behavior and other behavior analysts. And on Clubhouse, you can find me at Mika G.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I love talking with you. So just thank you for coming on and sharing all your knowledge with us.
Well, thank you so much. You see, I'm so much calmer now. Our first conversation, I was like, "Oh, I'm hearing my soul."
Oh, now you're a pro. You got this.
But now I'm like, okay, cool. So no, thank you so much for having me back on. You're doing amazing work. I cannot wait to see what the retreat is gonna look like. Super excited about that.
Shout out to the retreat.
So proud of you. So lucky to have met you, to know you. Um, just keep doing what you're doing.
Oh,
You're CJ and that baby girl. So lucky to have you. So
oh,
lucky to have you.
thank you so much. I appreciate you for that.
No problem.
Hey, mamas, this is the moment we have all been waiting for. The Balanced Working Mama Retreat is happening this year, March 5th, 6th, and 7th. This year, our theme will be achieving the balance and wellness in your motherhood, and I know you'll absolutely do that. So please, please join us again March 5th, 6th, and 7th for our very first virtual retreat for discussions, community, empowerment, engagement, rest, relax, feel rejuvenated, and be sure that you're going to get the balance and wellness that you've been needing this year in 2021. Register now, or you can register until February 12th, but there is a special advantage to registering in January, and I cannot wait to see y'all there. Register at www.balancedworkingmama.com. Hey, mamas. I hope that you truly enjoyed that episode today. Shamika is so knowledgeable, and I'm so appreciative of her being on the podcast, not once, but twice. But this time to talk to us about our children and their behaviors and how to better understand them. And so, you've probably listened to this episode, and I'm sure that there's probably a lot of tips and tricks that you heard us talk about today that you really want to try to implement for your children. But one thing I don't want you to forget is that it's so important for us to also make sure that we are nurturing and taking care of ourselves enough so that we actually can implement these strategies, these tips, these tricks for our kids. And so, the one thing that I want to leave you with for our Balanced Working Mama reflection today is, yes, you want to better understand and better manage your children's behavior. However, what first do you need to do to give back to yourself so that you can nurture yourself and then actually be present and be able to implement some of the things that you want to do for your kids? I think sometimes we forget that parenting is hard work. We expect that it just comes naturally, especially for mothers. We expect that no matter how tired you are, no matter how overwhelmed you are, you should be able to just do it well. And that's not true. But what we do know is that we tend to show up a little bit better in our mama role when we have taken care of ourselves first. So, before you even consider implementing these things that we talked about today, what do you need to do for yourself to make sure that you actually can be present and implement all of these things in the way that you really want to? Give that some thought, mama. And I hope that this episode was helpful. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else, but then also consider rating the podcast on Apple Podcasts. And I look forward to talking with y'all next week. Hey, mama. Thank you for listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast. If you love this podcast, please be sure to rate it and share it with another mama that you know. And don't forget to follow me and Balanced Working Mama on Instagram. I'll talk to you soon.